Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another great guest. I was able to connect with this person online, got to see what he does, and wow, he is absolutely amazing. He does so much great things for his clients, his audiences, adds so much great value, gets people to reach their peak potential, reach their high performance, and that's something I'm always interested in, and I'm very excited to have him here. He is the host of the Results Engine podcast, which is also something that I recommend everybody to sign up on and take a listen to because he interviews so many amazing people on that show. He is the CEO, head coach of the Results Engine. He helps sales professionals scale their business, increase their commissions, increase the amount of money they make. And he also helps them take control of their lives because that is ultimately what drives everything in order for you to be successful. So please welcome speaker, entrepreneur, high performance coach, Mr. Mike SZCZESNIAK.
Fong, thanks for joining me, dude. And great pronunciation. That's how I know you did your research. Usually people butcher the last name, or it's the famous last question right before we press record, which for everybody listening, he did not ask me. So I appreciate that, brother. Thanks for having me.
Hey, awesome. Thanks for being here. And thanks for being here all the way from New York. It's always
Let's
great
do
to
it.
talk to people in the States and people who's all the way to the East Coast, which is fun. So thank you very much for that. Um,
100%.
Before we get diving into like the tough questions, how did you become this high performance coach? Somebody who's out there who's helping so many people, because I'm sure you didn't come out of the womb and go, you know what, I'm gonna be a coach.
Yeah, no, in fact, I actually resisted it for a really long time. So I'll try and give the spark notes here and then feel free to dig into any part that you want. But growing up, life revolved around where I could play soccer in college. Like that was pretty much everything. That was my entire college search. It was like, where could I get recruited to go play? But I grew up in a family that was very much like, hey, you're going to use athletics to get a better, more expensive piece of paper, so to speak. Like you're not going to go D1 for the sake of going D1 and getting a trash education. Right. So I ended up dumb lucking my way into an engineering degree, graduated with a software engineering degree and went straight down to Wall Street. Frankly, dude, because I was told engineers made a lot of money, even though I'd been in sales my entire life. I didn't know what commission sales was because it was always hourly for the decade that I spent in retail. Had I known about commission sales, I probably would have taken a different route. But back then it was like, hey, engineers make a bunch of money. And all I wanted to do was make a lot of money, retire young, and open a pit bull rescue foundation. That was all I cared about. So dumb luck my way into an engineering degree, went straight down to Wall Street, wrote code for a living for 7 years. And in that entire process, I was always just like, I mean, my climb in corporate was very linear, right? Big pay raise, big promotion every year. Like I was a pretty average engineer, but probably above average. I'm fairly critical of myself, but I was the youngest senior engineer by over a decade in my company, this global luxury e-commerce company. And I'm still convinced that the only reason I did that was number one, because people loved to work with me. And number two, I could communicate well, which in the engineering world is those who can speak the business side as well as write the code. That's a very admirable asset, or like a very valuable asset rather. So I did that, and I was just always building businesses, right? I always wanted to create, I always wanted to find a way that I could make that money. I knew that I looked at the life I wanted to create. I knew it would cost a lot of money. And I knew that the only way that I could earn that money is if I solved problems that impacted enough people in order to warrant the income, right? Like your income will always be directly proportional to the number of lives that you touch in a positive way. Shout out to Bob Berg and John David Mann, who wrote The Go-Giver, because that is the best book of all time and everyone should read it. But I was just always searching, like creating, trying to see what I could do. The first one was network marketing and direct sales. Sucked at that, but learned a lot. Did just well enough to get flown around to do all the trips for free, but never really made any money, but made amazing contacts, learned a ton about business, and developed some great, now they're mentors and dear friends of mine. Next one was drop shipping and e-commerce. That was just kind of for fun. And then the third one was the coaching and consulting, which is where ultimately the business that I took full time back in 2018, which I'm super grateful for. Honestly, dude, I got into the space with all that context given to finally answer your question. I got into the space because I was struggling a lot. Like while I was climbing in corporate at 23, 23 years old, I was really quickly figuring out what anxiety and debilitating panic attacks were. And I didn't really understand it. Like I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know anyone who had been through that. I just remember on January 1st, 2014, it was the first day that I ever experienced a full-blown attack, and I was living on the 17th floor of this luxury apartment building on the Upper East Side. Right. Like, again, like I had all the vanity shit that I thought mattered, the senior title, the 6-figure salary, the luxury apartment on the Upper East Side with the fountains outside and the fountains inside and the 24-hour doorman. Like, dude, we did not belong there. And frankly, the only reason we lived there is my roommate had a great connection through his family. But he was out of town. He was always out of town he always went upstate or like Vermont or something for New Year's. And I remember sitting by myself on New Year's Day, which speaks to the mental component of all of these pieces. Right. But New Year's Day, a little hungover, watching Captain Phillips, and all of a sudden I go through this attack. And I remember picking up the phone and calling my mom, because in those moments, like, you just crave connection, right? And I just remember having to mute the phone because I was head deep in the toilet, puking my brains out in the middle of this attack. And I didn't want that to scare my mother more than my tonality clearly already did. And this started a journey of, a year and a half, going to the doctors, getting my chest x-ray, doing the breathing test. Like, remember, I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I thought there was a physiological issue. Fast forward a year and a half, I heard the terms panic, anxiety, and I like kind of started to piece 2 and 2 together on my own. And it had me going down the rabbit hole. It's like, I realized a couple of things. Number one, every one of these attacks happened in a moment where I felt guilty for not working. So then the next question, being the engineering nerd that I am, is like, how do I reverse engineer this so that I don't struggle with the same problem? And what I got to was, well, 2 pieces. Number one, if I could be more effective and productive when I was working, I might not feel like shit when I wasn't. And then number 2, if I could pair that with a healthier mindset, I could probably solve this. And I realized I had no idea what it meant to be truly productive. Productivity is maybe 20% of the work that we do with our clients. But that was, I joke, like my gateway drug into high performance. That's what got me down the path. I had resisted the coaching industry for a long time up until that point, because there was a bunch of 17-year-olds with life coach in their Instagram bio, and I didn't understand it. Like, I thought the coaches had the solutions. I didn't understand that coaches asked the questions in this adult world. So it was like a misunderstanding on my part, but I didn't want to be associated with it. Fast forward, I met one of the world's leading high performance coaches. That gave me permission, so to speak. I wrote my first program on the flight home from that event. It was like Ohio to New York, so super short flight. My keyboard took a beating, and built it as a side hustle for a year and a half. Eventually dove off a cliff, trying to figure out how to fly in 2018, and haven't looked back. So probably longer answer than you expected, but hopefully that answers the question.
That's good. There's a lot of stuff in there that I found very, very interesting. One, I like how you say I dumb lucked my way through engineering degree. Like, yeah. I don't know how many people could dumb luck their way. Like, you must be naturally talented to begin with to actually go through it. The other thing you said was, you were, what was it? You were, you sucked at network marketing, but then you were still able to get all the free trips. I mean, lots of people go out there, work so hard, and they still can't get those free trips, but you sucked at it. So again, your natural abilities came through again. But the anxiety stuff. Now, when you recognized that that was the issues that you were having, and you focused on, okay, what do I need to do? Yeah. What were some of the first steps that you took to counterattack the anxiety attacks, and getting your way back up to where you wanted to be?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, dude, so first of all, the business that I was building completely tanked, which was the network marketing business. And the reason for that is, like, each one of these attacks would legitimately put me in a 2 to 3 day funk. Right. I don't want to use any of the buzzwords that you hear nowadays with relation to mental health. I feel like they get thrown around like hotcakes nowadays, and they're losing their meaning. But like, I was in not a good place compared to where I am used to being, and in those 2 to 3 day funks, like, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't work on the business. I wouldn't go to the gym. I basically let go of a lot of things that made me me and had generated the success up until that point. But there was one thing that I did, which was I did cling to personal development. So I kept up with the reading. I kept up with a lot of those types of things. I probably kept up with some gym, but not as much as I'm used to. Like, I mean, collegiate athlete, competitive power lifter, post college, like have always been in the gym for the last decade and a half, like that's always been a focal point for me. So I'm sure there was some of it, but frankly, dude, I just threw the kitchen sink at it. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I was blessed to be around a lot of people that were pointing me in the right direction. Not that I was specifically asking them about what was going on in my world, but like the things that I knew everybody who had what I wanted, the things that they were doing. Right. So the mindfulness, the personal development, I clung to those things. And I don't exactly know what put me in that path, but eventually it kind of sorted itself out, and it was a long journey, but like you learn your relationship with your thoughts. You learn how all of these things piece together. You learn to be a little bit more effective. And yeah, I just clung to those things and I made them non-negotiable.
Mhm.
And over time, it started to kind of chip away at what I was experiencing. They became fewer and further between. And when they did, I learned the triggers, right? Like I learned what I started to feel, and I knew that I needed to change my state and do something different and like kind of combat those thoughts before it transitions from anxiety to panic and your body like physically responds to it. Yeah, a lot of those different things, but we kind of just threw the kitchen sink at it and see what would work, and thankfully it did.
Mhm. I liked how you talked about having the people around you, talking to people, how we threw the kitchen sink at it, meaning you had somebody else being there to support you, to get you through the tough times. How important is it for people to surround themselves with people that can actually support them? Because I know lots of, like, it doesn't have to be the anxiety stuff, but even business. Lots of people wants to go into business, wants to invest in real estate, and they're surrounded by others who are saying it's not going to work. Don't do it.
Yeah.
It's going to be risky and all that kind of stuff, right? How big of a difference is it when you have a group of people who goes, okay, this is what we can do. Let's try it this way. Let's push forward here. Let's throw the kitchen sink at it and see what happens. Like, how did you navigate through the people who's negative versus working with people who are able to help you?
I think the negativity I became numb to. If anyone's ever built a network marketing business, you know what rejection feels like. So, not that it doesn't still sting and still hurt, but like I was fairly numb to it. I think that my network is the number one asset in my life. And I don't think people understand how important that is. Like I remember when I first, so we're on this call because of a mutual connection of ours. Shout out to Randy. And I met Randy through a mastermind that was a multi-5-figure investment. And I cut my financial runway in half. Literally, I went to the event 3 weeks after I left corporate America. I had just ripped my business apart and I was building from the ground up, like no revenue. And I felt so at home in that community that I wanted to join it. And I've been there 6 years now. And everyone looked at that and they're like, well, what are you getting out of it? They expected it to be revenue. They always expect it to be a dollar for dollar transaction. And these are the same people that tell you to be realistic, that tell you that these things are risky. And let me preface this with, they do that out of love. They're just wrong. And they're doing the wrong math because they're abiding by the system that we've been sold and the belief structures that we've been sold, that if we just open our eyes and look at it, we know that that's not true. We think salaries are guaranteed. Well, as we're recording this, tens of thousands of jobs are being cut everywhere. And we used to just think it was Elon Musk being a bad man because he bought Twitter and laid everybody off. Then every tech company followed suit. We have AI about to replace millions and millions of jobs. Like nothing's guaranteed. So our definition of safe versus risky needs to be reevaluated, which is a whole different conversation. But I look at right now. Let's say I needed to shut my business tomorrow. I can go into my network and generate an opportunity out of thin air.
Right.
Because I've built the skill sets over the years, and I have people that I've done nothing but add value for, and I've never asked of anything. And these people are doing really big things. Like, that's why you pay to be in these masterminds. It's not because someone's going to get rich at the top, right? Frankly, they usually pour more money into delivering for every member other than like actually pocketing it, right? But people just don't get it. The real reason for it is because everyone's super busy, and if there's skin in the game, they're going to prioritize putting it on their calendar and being in San Diego or Las Vegas or Miami or freaking Austin, Texas for that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but I cannot stress it enough. Like, my network has been more fruitful than anything, and I didn't build it for it to be fruitful, but it is a benefit of doing so. I did it because I wanted to be around dope people doing dope shit in the world, solving massive problems, giving back in major ways. Like, that's the kind of person I wanted to do life with. And it's just an added benefit that when you hit the trials and tribulations that life will inevitably throw at you, doesn't matter how good you think someone has it, like, life is punching them in the throat repeatedly in some capacity. It's an added benefit that those people will be there to support you if you build your network properly. So I cannot stress that enough for people.
Something I would like to touch on what you kind of mentioned is that mindset of the value, and what is like, for $1, what do you get out for it? Lots of people are understanding, hey, you put tens and thousands of dollars into education, for instance, university, college, and whatnot, for the potential of getting a good job.
Yeah.
They don't think that way. They think, oh no, once you put that money in, you're guaranteed to get a good job. But that's not right. So the thing is, what you are doing and what many other people in entrepreneurship is doing, they're putting that money into like further education, masterminds, coaching, mentorship, and whatnot, to build that mindset so that you have that frequency to absorb the opportunities that you can see out there that other people can't see. Now, you work with so many different people, so many high-level individuals and business partners and whatnot. What is the difference from a person who is at high performance to somebody who's just about to reach high performance? What's that mindset like?
That's an interesting question. And I think in order to answer it first, we need to actually look at what true high performance is. Because a lot of people will listen to this, and again, going back to the dollars, right? People think high performance is just like wealthy and successful, which is not true. High performance is building this well-oiled machine. Like, we're not just building a stack of cash. Now, don't get me wrong. Every one of our clients comes to us because they want to make more money and help more people. And that's fine. And we do that. And we have guarantees in place to make sure that we do that. But it's not just building a stack of cash at the expense of your relationships, your health, your well-being. High performance is building that stack of cash while also filling the relationship bank account, while also filling the health and wellness bucket, right? It's building this well-oiled machine that's thriving on all cylinders. So to answer your question, I believe that the biggest difference is the alignment and the intentionality. We all know, everybody listening to this knows someone in their personal life that is wildly successful financially compared to like how we would view things, like at the peak of financial success, but they're on the brink of divorce and their relationship is falling apart, or they're wildly overweight and unhealthy and diabetic or whatever it is. Like, we all know those people, and that is not high performance. That is being wildly effective in one area of life. And that's not what we're about. That is not what our people are about. Like, I'll give someone an example. For people who join our program, many who join our program that are in committed relationships or married or whatever it may be, like, one of the most life-changing non-negotiables that we help them build out is just date night with their spouse. Yet so many people are neglecting it, right? You go into a mastermind of top achievers, top performers, everyone doing millions and millions of dollars in revenue, and you ask them, like, how many of you dated your spouse in the last 30 days? And the amount of hands that go up is like incredibly underwhelming depending on the community. And I just always have strived to make sure that I'm in the communities where like every hand goes up. Like, to go back to the mentors and the masterminds, like I mentioned, I've been in that community for 6 years. It's because the people running it have not only become dear friends and mentors of mine, but I care, like I look at them as people that I can model how I want to grow into my life. Right? Like, they're at the next stage, they have children, they have whatever it is. When I joined, I wasn't married. I hadn't even met my wife yet, to be honest. I might have just met her like a couple days before, type of thing. I think I actually might have. Now we're married. Like I stayed in those communities because I looked at how they loved on their spouse. I looked at how they parented their kids. All of these things, all encompassing, that's high performance. Right? And I refuse to allow, not that it's entirely up to me, but like I make sure I do everything in my power to make sure that my people don't end up like so many people who they claim that they're working so hard for their family, and then they sacrifice their family for the working so hard, because there's no clarity, there's no vision, and there's no alignment. So I think that's the biggest differentiator to me, is that alignment and that intentionality with how they're operating their lives and their businesses. It really doesn't have to do with the financial success or the accolades in their career. The people who have the intentionality and the alignment are the true high performers.
No, that is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. It's that balance, that work-life balance and relationship balance and whatnot. So what is the key to that? Because there's lots of people who say that doesn't exist. There's also some people who say, well, it exists, but not all at the same time. You have to be able to manage it. So for you, what's the key for people to balance that out?
Well, I would agree with both of those answers in some capacity. I don't like the word balance. I think that it insinuates 50-50, which is a pipe dream. I prefer the term harmony. So there's going to be a season where you're 90% business and 10% family. And then there's going to be a season where you're 99% family and 1% business. Right? The goal is just making sure that we're in alignment the entire time. We're always pursuing what truly matters to us, and we are present throughout the process. Like, be where your feet are. So again, it's the same answer. Like, what is the answer? It is getting hyper clear on what you actually want in life, not what Instagram told you to want, not what your significant other told you to want, not what your parents told you to want, not what your manager or your boss told you to want, like what you actually want. Getting hyper clear on that, relentlessly pursuing it, and making sure that you're staying in alignment in that entire process. Now, the what you want, to clarify that is not just business success. That is what you want your life to look like. Okay. What kind of husband you want to be, what kind of father you want to be, right? What kind of friend, what kind of son you want to be. Those are the things that matter. And when you're clear on that, and you're clear on what your boundaries are, then you have the guardrails in place, and you just make sure you're living in alignment with that. And you just check in, because it is a harmony. You're not going to be sitting in that 50-50 moment in the middle of the seesaw all the time. But if you're clear on what you want and you check in with that North Star, well, you can make sure that as you find yourself falling too far to one side of that spectrum, and you're maybe not in a season where you should be doing that, cool, you can course correct. Like, perfection does not exist. I believe that true high performance, right, is just being able to understand when you're off kilter, when you're off alignment, and just having the tools to course correct quicker. You catch it quicker, you course correct quicker, and then you win. So that's what I would say, but it starts with the alignment and the intentionality.
Right. Now, having said that, once you have that in place, I would assume that you have a lot of conversations with the people around you, and also have things set at the very beginning so that expectations aren't mismanaged. So, for instance, let's say if there's your kids have a baseball game or a soccer game or something like that, you may or may not be able to get to every single one, but I'm assuming that you've already set boundaries as to, okay, this is what I can make, this is what I could actually contribute, but I also need to put some time into this too. And people in your family needs to be able to respect that as well. So for you, what kind of conversations do you have? How do you start that conversation? What kind of time blocks do you have so that some people can actually relate to, okay, I have that scenario, I can kind of work with that as well.
Yeah. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Like expectations are the most important thing, whether it's sales, business, personal relationships. Like mismanaged expectations is where most people drop the ball. And I don't have children yet, so my life from that perspective is fairly simplified. My wife and I are both building businesses, so we're both in a very much like hustle and growth season. But so for us, the number one thing is date night. Like date night happens every single week, and it's non-negotiable with our schedules. The way that it works out, we don't necessarily, like, I know some people have the same night every single week. We don't have that. We're just both consciously aware, like, hey, it is going to happen this week. It happens to be Sunday. We're going to go see the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie together, right? Like that is it for us. For those with children, like, yeah, it becomes a little bit more complicated from a time management solution. But again, it comes down to the expectations, right? And like, what are the agreements you have with the people that you love? Dude, I know some people that are absolutely crushing it, that their agreement with their wife is like, during the week, I can work however much I want because I'm building this ship for us.
Right.
And on the weekends, I am completely off the grid from work and all in on family. And that works for them, right? Like, I'm not here to judge anybody's agreements with their spouse and with their family. But again, like the most important thing in my eyes from a high performance perspective and just from an integrity perspective is keeping the commitments that you're making and just making sure you're communicating them, right? I think that my word to everybody else is pretty damn important. My word to myself is more important, right? If I don't have that, I don't have anything.
Right.
And you look at both of those things, like those commitments are not just things that are being made to other people. They're things that you're making to yourself as well. So yeah, I think it's just like communicating the expectations, putting it in the calendar, building the business around those things, right? Because you build the business around your life and not the life around your business. And yeah, just making sure to do everything in your power to stay in that alignment and keep those commitments.
Now, something else that you're very, very good at is helping sales professionals increase their sales, increase their commissions, scale their businesses. Now, you work with a lot of them. Are there any common no-nos that sales professionals are doing right now that you can go, okay, here's a top 2 or top 5 things that people could change right now that could help them increase their sales instantly?
Yeah. And let me preface this with, I don't think this stuff is unique to sales. I just think it's a more expensive problem for sales professionals, because if you're in the right opportunity, your income is wildly scalable, right? So the most important one is to stop negotiating. Like, and I could say that more aggressively. And really what I mean is stop lying to yourself. And it comes back to those commitments that we were talking about. We were speaking about it from a family and like a life harmony perspective, but the same thing happens in business, right? Especially in sales. Every single one of our clients comes to us. Again, they want to make more money, but when we diagnose the problem, like they're all really seeking consistency. Like that's the big C word. And really what they want is consistency of income. But what they don't have is consistency of input, right? And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one is because, it's a fairly confrontational bit of work. And like, there's a lot of things that can lead to the lack of consistency, right? Rejection on the phone, rejection knocking doors, whatever it is. Karen opens the door and, chases you off her property because she's the president of the HOA. Or, God forbid, a weapon is pulled. Like the craziest stories happen on the doors. I learned that really quickly. Number one, working in this business, and number two, interviewing a lot of the top performers in the space. But something leads to the lack of consistency, right? whether it is rejection becomes insurmountable and you call the day short, or you're afraid that a deal is going to collapse. You get that one email, and then, before you know it, you're sitting in your car 37 cat videos later in this black hole of YouTube or Instagram Reels or TikTok or whatever, and you've missed 2 hours of primetime knocking or primetime dialing, right? Whatever it might be. And this is the flip, and this is where it's a double-edged sword. And I love the background. It's a bridge, but it looks like a roller coaster, right? And that's really what sales is for a lot of people. We work with a lot of solar reps, and for them, it's the running meme is the solar coaster, right? There's two reasons for that. Number one, we just outlined it. It can be fairly confrontational, and people negotiate, and they call the day short. They don't go out knocking, whatever. They negotiate with their commitments. So we lack the consistency that way. Yeah. The other one is the complacency, right? So if you're selling really high ticket sales, you have really high ticket commissions. And if all those hit at the same time, right? Solar is very lucrative. You have a couple installs going in the same week. The next week you get a fat check. There's like 30, 50 grand in your account. You're like, holy shit, dude, I'm rich. I don't need to go knock tomorrow. And you stop. I don't need to go dial tomorrow, and you stop doing all of the things that made you successful in the first place. All the things that successful probably even goes in air quotes there. Like, you got a couple deals, but we stop doing the things that generated that revenue, and we allow our momentum to die. And there is nothing more exhausting than allowing the momentum to die and then having to rebuild it, and then letting it die and then rebuilding it.
Yeah.
Right. So to bring it back to the question, to your answer, well, why am I saying stop lying to yourself, stop negotiating? Is because I believe people negotiate with their dreams, and specifically within the relationship of sales, the non-negotiables should be like, what is your output every single day? Like, all hell breaks loose, raining sideways, like get a ticket pulled over on the way to work, like got to go to a doctor appointment. What is the mandatory minimum that you're going to be doing? How many doors are you knocking? How many emails are you sending? How many DMs are you sending? How many calls are you making? Like, what do those numbers look like? And stop negotiating on them. That should be the bare minimum, because then you have consistent inflow in the top of the funnel, right? Which means that you will have consistent outflow, not perfectly, but in theory, that is how that works. Everyone talks about how sales is a numbers game, but no one talks about how to play the numbers. And we just hear so often, like, go full volume, right? 150 doors a day, 150 dials a day. And that works until it doesn't. And if there's no sustainability, you increase the likelihood that you negotiate. Way too many people are negotiating, and that's why they don't make the money they freaking deserve. Well, they should, and let me rephrase that. They don't deserve it because they're not doing the thing.
Yep.
They're not making the money they're capable of. And then they're upset. And then they call us.
So when people call you and go, I don't get how do I maintain this consistency? A lot of it has to do with discipline. Do you have any little tricks or mindset foolery that could help them go, okay, this is what you need to think about so that they stay disciplined?
Yeah. Well, it's the exact opposite of what everybody thinks. People think they need volume, and the opposite is actually what needs to happen. So I'll give you an example. Well, before I give you an example, let me use this metaphor. Discipline, just like willpower, it's a muscle, and it needs to be flexed every day. It needs to be exercised every day. And the more that you do it, the more that you will have, right? Self-confidence. There's a great quote from Ed Milet that helped me rationalize and structure the framework of everything that we do in our company early on. And it's still the framework we use to this day. This is back when it was like Ed Milet was still Ed Milet, but no one knew who Ed Milet was, right? He was just this random dude, Forbes 50 wealthiest under 50, like on his third private jet already, like just crazy successful, right? And he did a huge podcast tour. And I think it was his interview with Lewis Howes. And whatever the question was, his answer was, happiness comes from self-confidence. And self-confidence comes from doing what you say you're going to do over and over and over and over and over again. Right? So when we think about it this way, Well, really, we talked about those non-negotiables earlier, right? Like every time we keep those commitments, we stack a win, it builds the momentum. We do it over and over and over again. It stacks up and up and up. And that's our momentum. It leads to everything that we want, the happiness, the fulfillment, everything, right? Because that's where the self-confidence comes from. Well, when you're self-confident, you trust yourself. You keep your word. You know that when I commit to do something, I'm going to do it. It's as good as done. That's the perfect ideal solution. We get there through stacking the wins. So you look at like a cliche example, like making your bed, right? You could Google Forbes, like make your bed. And there's probably countless articles about how making your bed is the most important skill set that you need to build a 7-figure business. Bro, I make my bed all the time. Check my bank account every damn day. It has never deposited a dollar. It is not about the making of the bed. It's about the win being stacked. Of course, I'm not naive to like the mental clarity and having a clean living space and like cool. The list goes on. I get it. Those are cool. But it's about stacking the win. It's not about the result of the action so much as everybody thinks it is. It's about the doing of the thing. It's the commitment that you made, right? So to bring this back to sales, well, if we're lacking discipline, it's because you don't fucking trust yourself, dude. Like you don't believe that you're going to do it. And what most people do is they're like, oh, let's say their commitment was 50 dials and they only made 37. Cool. That's an L based on the commitment that they made. So they think, oh, I'll make 67 tomorrow and I'll catch up. It's like, no, you won't, dude. And they do this over and over and over again. And they somehow think that even though they failed to keep their commitment, they somehow believe that they're going to do it the next day at a higher number. Right. Like, and I'm speaking at people right now, but like I'm doing that because that was me, right? We've all done it. So what people actually need to do, if they really want to build consistency, they want to flex the discipline, they actually need to drop the number. They need to take the ego hit. They need to make a lower commitment. And your sales manager might be upset at you, like tell him to freaking DM me if you want. And obviously, insert disclaimer here, consult this with your managers before you make any freaking changes. I do not want angry DMs from people saying I lost my job because I did what you said. Like, bro, talk to your managers, whether you're delegating something, dropping the volume, etc. But they should understand. And if they don't, then have them DM me because I'll talk to them about why we're doing this. You need to drop that volume such that you can firm up your baseline. You cannot build a skyscraper on quicksand. And if you are breaking your commitments every single day, that's what your foundation looks like. So we need to take the ego hit, drop the volume, reduce it to the ridiculous, like John Assaraf says, or Jim Quick calls it small, simple steps. It's the same paradigm. It's the same structure. We drop the volume to something that we know that we can hit, and then we go to exceed it, right? But the commitment was kept. If you're striving, so many people strive for 100 dials a day, and then they're like, well, I did 67. That's way more than I used to. It's like, that might feel good, but you negotiated. You still broke your commitment. So let's commit to what we're actually going to do, and then we can strive for a bigger number, but the commitment is what actually matters. So people just need to drop the volume, hit that over time. And then just like you do in the gym, we progressively overload. We can increase the volume over time, but you need to actually build some trust in your word, because right now most people don't have it. That's what they need to do if they're struggling with that.
Now, something that you mentioned many times during that whole segment there was that commitment, and something that you've committed a lot of your time and effort into is your podcast. You have a lot of great guests on there. There's a lot of great content on there. Lots of inspirational, motivational stuff on there as well. Tell us more about the podcast. How did it come about, and what are some of the big things that's coming up for it?
Yeah. So it's been a big project for us for many years. It's the second podcast I've ever run. The first one was called Learn, Grow, Earn. I started that. Frankly, I like treated putting a business entity in place as like most people think about getting a website domain. I'm like, this words just kept coming up to me over and over again. And then eventually it became a podcast. That was super fun. We had couple hundred uploads, tens of thousands of downloads, like really, really fun. And it like got my feet wet. But then when I started the consulting company, I had to kill it because I was spending a couple $100 a month to produce it. I needed all of my money to go towards the business. So to use Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank's favorite terminology, I took it behind the barn and shot it. And I always wanted to start one again, but I knew that I needed to stay focused. So I didn't launch the results engine until December, maybe late November 2019. It literally went live as I was walking through JFK or LaGuardia or something like that to board a flight out to Orange County, or maybe no, San Diego that time for a mastermind where I met Randy. Not the first time I met him, but same mastermind. It stemmed from, it was more of like a brand building play. Like some of my mentors were like, you need it for lead gen and da-da-da-da. Okay, that's how it started. Frankly, I did it because I wanted to build relationship capital and create a ton of amazing content for people. That's what we've done. It wasn't really, it wasn't niche. It was more of a brand builder than a lead generator. I've booked one call in the history of the podcast in terms of like direct CTAs from the podcast, and they no-showed. Like it does not make me money. But I've made some really, really cool connections, right? So it's been a lot of fun. We're 270 uploads deep so far. Been rocking and rolling ever since. The big thing moving forward, and I, just like yourself, I interview all walks of life, right? Like the 8 and 9 figure founders, the former pro athletes, Super Bowl winners, the scientists. Like I'm fascinated with high performance. I'm fascinated with people's journey and what it actually takes. So the podcast is like my little mission in this world, to just cut through the fluff. Like no fluffy shit that you see on Instagram that makes you feel good and gets you to click the like button. But then when life inevitably punches you in the throat, it doesn't solve your problems, right? But like, what does it actually take? The stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And this is wildly important, in my opinion, in the entrepreneurial space. You look at social media and it's a highlight reel and it's the sunshine and rainbows and like you need to start your own business and you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow, but it doesn't talk about what do you do when you're on the verge of bankruptcy, right? What do you do when you have hundreds of families that are now relying on you to put food on their table and your decisions directly impact all of them? It doesn't talk about that stress. It doesn't talk about not knowing where your paycheck comes from. So those moments are really important. And I guess all of this to come to a T, like that's why I'm so fascinated with the podcast and why I love this work, because I need more people to have those conversations. It isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and the podcast is my little way of doing it, but I love it. I'll probably do it forever until I don't, and we'll see what happens then. But like, it's been a really cool mission for me. The biggest thing moving forward, I mean, we're still rocking and rolling, consistent uploads. The biggest thing is YouTube. We just launched that in the last couple months. We have, of the 270 uploads, 220-ish of them are all interviews. We have footage from all of them except 1 or 2. So we're working down that backlog. Right now we're doing 1 upload and 3 shorts per episode. So a full episode and then 3 shorts every single week. Pretty soon we're going to ramp that volume up until 2 episodes and 6 shorts. And we're just going to work down that whole backlog. So really excited about the YouTube side of it. And yeah, dude, we're rocking and rolling. So anyone that's just looking to learn more about kind of what we do, or just learn from top performers around what it actually takes and what some of their really good lessons were from the darker times in their journey, yeah, that's the place for it.
Cool. Awesome stuff. Now let's put you back on the world stage, and you have one message to share for everybody to remember Bike for. What's that one message?
We already talked about stop lying, so I won't beat that dead horse. And we also already talked about the go-giver, impact over income, all that type of stuff. Solve a bigger problem, you'll make more money. What I will say is get really clear on what actually matters to you, and then make sure that you keep the main thing the main thing. to add context there, my number one fear in life, number one fear, and this is probably why I'm so fascinated and why I have the interviews I have on the show. Like, selfishly, dude, I'm trying to steal their knowledge because they're in different stages of life than I am. And if I can learn from their lessons, I don't have to go through the problems. Right. But my number one fear in life is missing out on the big things because I thought they were the little things while I was focused on the little things that I thought were the big things.
Yep.
I'm petrified of that. I see so many people, we talked about this earlier, so many people claiming that they work so hard for their family and then they sacrifice their family for the working so hard. Mm. And I'm so afraid of becoming someone like that. So I'm sure I'll make mistakes in my journey, but that's why I'm so focused on learning those lessons. That's why I attract myself to people that I believe are doing business right. Like, I could find anybody to teach me how to make millions and millions of dollars, but who's doing it in the way that I want in the world? Who's having a big impact? Who's having the family time, right? Get clear on what you actually want and make sure that you keep the main thing the main thing. That's the most important thing, in my opinion.
Awesome stuff. Before I let you go, I got 5 quick rapid fire questions for you. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. You're stranded on a desert island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
Pizza.
Hollywood calls and says, "Hey, Mike, we love your story. We want to do a biopic on you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, Mike, I got casted to play you. Let's get to know each other, spend some time together." And you go, "Hey, I'm going to take you out to town. We're going to have some great fun. What's that day like?" And then at the end, what's that special dish that you could prepare for him for dinner?
Oh, that's cool. Probably take him out on the golf course, have some drinks, smoke cigars, and for dinner, I have to cook it.
Yep.
Or
you could say you cooked it.
Yeah. No, we probably throw steaks on the grill.
Sounds cool. A hidden talent that not many people know about. I've had people sing on this show before.
Dude, you are testing me right now. Most people know, like, I'm a private person, but like a lot of my life's on the internet. So most people know what I'm pretty good at. I would say so much for rapid fire. You stumped me. I would probably I'm sure there's like a random sport that I'm actually really good at that people would not expect because I don't know, I'm fairly athletic.
Awesome. Last question before I get there. Number from 1 to 5.
3.
1, 2, 3. So if you had to relate success to a plate, how is success like a plate?
I guess we'll look at it through like the actual meal side of things. Like, to me, success is what fills that plate, right? Like, do we want to fill it with a bunch of random shit, or do we want to fill it with the food that we actually want? Right? Again, it comes back to the alignment. So make sure your plate is full of the stuff that actually matters in life.
Well done. That's how success is like a plate. Any final words from you? And also, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Dude, thanks for having me. This is fun. You stumped me on that talent question. I'm gonna come up with something. It's probably a lame answer that I gave, but best places, I spend the most time on Instagram, at Mike SZCZESNIAK on Instagram. My team is in the DMs at all times. So if people have questions, they want to challenge anything that we talked about here, slide in the DMs. Either myself or my team will get back to you. If they don't know the answer, they'll flag it and get the answer from me. But happy to support however we can. And yeah, dude, thank you so much for having me. I think we covered pretty much all the lessons that I repeat on a daily basis. So you did a great job. Appreciate you, man.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Make sure you reach out to Mike, connect with him on social media, check out his YouTube, check out his podcast. Lots of great stuff there. You're not going to be disappointed. Once again, thank you very much for your time, all your great stories, all your golden nuggets. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. This time has gone by very fast. Thank you once again.
Thanks for having me, Fong.
For everybody, today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.